Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of Origins. And for the first time, we are recording right here in the MyBookie Studios at the Woodward Sports headquarters in downtown Birmingham. I'm your host, Ben Smith. I'm so honored to be here today. I'm excited because we got a Detroit legend in the house to talk about his origin story. But first, I feel like I might need to explain the show a little bit. 99% of you have likely not seen the show or heard it, so I'll tell you all about it. This show is a weekly podcast where myself and experts in the field of whatever subject that I'm talking about, we break down the origin story of anything related to the world of sports. So if you're curious about the very first ever sports video game and how it directly connects to the Manhattan Project and the atomic bomb, this is a show for you. I had a physicist on, I had a gaming historian on to talk about that one. So that was really interesting. Also, if you're curious about the story of baseball and how the term America's game caused it to basically be a lie for about 100 years or so. If you're curious about that story or any other stories, make sure you check out Origins. It's available every week, every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. On Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. This one's going to be a fun one today. I think we may have one of the top number 25s to ever play the game, and considering this is our 25th episode here on Origins, it only felt right that here on this special day we have the man, the myth, the legend in studio with us today. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? This is Origins, Darren McCarty.
Great to be here, Ben. Great to be here. Obviously, here at Woodward Sports Network, and thank you for everything you do behind the scenes. All these great, as you can see, like this great graphic and stuff like that. So, making me look good. I appreciate that. But I love what you're doing with Origins. I think it's so interesting, especially to me too, because I'm a big history guy. About I got to know the why, and why do I think this way? But why? Where do we come from? And not only in sports, but in life. And it's anybody who's interested in history, definitely check out, because you dive in real deep. Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. And I think for anyone that is curious about how kind of the things that we accept are just part of sports today, you sometimes wonder, like, where did that come from? Who came up with this? And a lot of times it's a really fascinating story. And I imagine the same is going to be the case today with you, because as you know, read your book, did a lot of research on you going into today. So every week, if I have a guest on, I have them start at the beginning, and considering this is your story, let's start there. Where were you born and where were you raised?
So I was born in Burnaby, British Columbia, in a suburb of Vancouver. My dad, my biological father, was a police officer and undercover guy, and my mom, who is from southern Ontario, had moved out there, and I was born, and there's pictures of me growing up with Vancouver Canucks stuff in my crib and stuff, but my parents separated when I was 6 months old, so I always consider myself Detroit's favorite stepchild, because I grew up probably half an hour from across the border and just in a town called Leamington, originally in a little small town, 200 people, called Woodsley. So I consider that home, and I've been a huge Detroit sports fan my whole life. Anybody who knows me knows that my first love is baseball. Lance Parrish was my guy. 84 Tigers, my wheelhouse. 12 years old and stuff like this. So I realized at a young age I was better at punching people in the face than I was at hitting a curveball. So it seemed to work out for me, but everybody knows me knows my love of the Tigers. But growing up in Canada, obviously, getting introduced to hockey, it's a joke. We always say we learn to skate before we learn how to walk. Well, I learned how to do neither. That's why you relied on my fists. So
it's interesting how you get there to where you end up being starting to play hockey. We'll get to that in a second. But I'm familiar with where actually you grew up. My wife and I like to go to Kingsville.
Oh, absolutely.
Right down the road. We stay at the Grove and that awesome hotel. I love that area there. So I'm curious, but you mentioned you spent time in Woodsley as well. How would you describe yourself as a kid before hockey?
Yeah, pretty much same as I am. I was that kid that was into everything. I was lucky because at my grandparents' house they had, probably a couple acres, and it was all outdoors. We had horses next door. We had ponds. So grew up just pretty normally, middle class, stuff like that. I always loved it. I had a great relationship. My strongest bond was my grandfather, and I learned how to cut the grass, ride more when I was 3 or 4 years old, and do all that. I learned how to drive a car from the VFW, which was like 2 blocks away when I was like 5 or 6. So
Right.
I mean, it's like stories that you think about that you don't remember it that way growing up, but then when you think about it going back, it's I spent a lot of time at the VFW when I was a little kid. So
Yeah, because you said
like
it was
somebody else,
right down the road, right?
Right
So it was a
down
quick trip for you.
right down the road. Yeah, sitting on my grandpa's lap, steering a car. So I mean, and I'm sure it's just like everybody like back, and this is in the '70s. So I mean, it's the way of life. Things have changed a lot.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. And I'm curious though, when hockey did roll around, who is Sean Roberts, and who is he to you when hockey became into your life?
Yeah, so Sean Roberts. So all the athletic, people don't realize this, but all my hockey love comes from my mom. My mom was the first captain for the Essex Blue Angels women's hockey team in the '60s, and her side of the family, the Roberts, is my uncle Jack Roberts was a famous hockey player, football player over there, and then Sean Roberts was my cousin. So my cousin, who was, I think he's about 7 years older than I am, but I would always tag along. He was like my first hero as a kid. So when his buddies are like 12 and stuff, and I was like 5 or 6, but how I grew up to be so tough is because I would grow up and be playing tackle football at 8 years old with the 15, 16-year-olds, to me, it was like you learned either how to survive or because no one was giving you anything. And so Sean was my inspiration. He was sort of the junior C legend and tough guy. And it was sort of all this stuff is that, I always remember my Uncle Jack, and he always say, well, in the Bible, the good Lord says it's better to give than receive. So I assume he's talking about fighting. So, like different things like that. But Sean was the one that and it's funny because his path at a young age is that he's been a youth minister for like 30 years, you know what I'm saying? So it was always that sort of the faith connection and nurturing that. But I was as tough as I was because honestly, when I was 12 years old, I was fighting 16, 17, 18-year-olds,
Right.
and it was no big, like my mentality was this is just what I had to do. And that's sort of my mentality of when you got to do it as a job or do it against, it's not because you like to, it's just because you like to more than the guy that you don't want to.
Right. You went and played elsewhere at 15, and a guy named Brian Drum came through. Who was he to you, and how it affected, your eventual move there?
Most influential person of establishing Darren McCarty, the hockey player, because he told me he was my coach. So the big story with Drummer is I went and I used to go to Can-Am Hockey School in Guelph every summer since I was 7, 8 years old. And the deal was, here's some motivation that I had. I grew up, my stepdad, who's Craig McCarty, which he adopted me when I was 5 when my mom got married, which is coming up. He said these come out Thursday morning. Thursday's the 29th, right?
Yeah.
So that would have been their 44th anniversary on April 29th. And it was apropos, just thinking of all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But the fact that he owned an air conditioning refrigeration company, and he was a workaholic, and I mentioned it in my book, and I'm really straightforward about our relationship and the hate that I used to have for him because not understanding. And then today I live by all the lessons that he's given, and it's just a great lesson. But he owned air conditioning refrigeration, and it was a job you couldn't quit or get fired from. But that was my motivation because they would pay 1 week for me, and I'd have to pay the other week for camp. So I ended up going for 2 weeks for about 5 years in a row. And Brian Drum was the coach of the junior program the 1 year, and we traveled across Ontario and some of the states and Quebec in the summertime, and he was taking over the coaching for the Peterborough Roadrunners, which is a junior B team, and the year before they didn't win a game. So it was like an opportunity to be able to go and play instead of playing on a different, the hometown junior C team. I had to get out of the area and took that opportunity and leap of faith. And he was the one that told me, if you want to make it to the NHL, you got to do one thing 99.9% better than everybody else. And for you, it'll be physical. All you got to do is tell me, how do I get to where I need to go? And I don't care how crazy you think it is. Just tell me it, and I'll figure out a way, if that's where I'm going, that I'll get to. I've been blessed with that. It's a blessing. It's a blessing now, but it's a blessing and a curse until you realize how to control it. But I can conquer anything I put my mind to, positively or negatively, and I've proven that. So now I know who Darren McCarty the person is because of that. So I go for things that are important to him. And also too is to separate, the 25, the DMAC, the which is a huge part of who I am, but it's not the whole part. So with Drummer and stuff, he was the most influential as far as, learning how to grow up really quick. Yeah. And then also too, because he's told me, he said it was the easiest recipe. Say, first year in any league, no matter what it is, establish yourself. You don't care about your points. You don't care about scoring or anything. You care about establishing yourself physically. Because you got to remember, when you're growing up junior, which is, in the teenage years and stuff, you do gain, you come in, you fight, and then you gain room. And then you develop your skill. And you're always working. Like if you go back to my hometown, everybody who's there during the summertime between 88 and 92 would see me rollerblading from my house down to the pier and back, which was a 5-mile round trip. I'd do that every day. And it was just there was a crazy kid with the new rollerblades going through town, but I would never be denied.
Yeah. I mean, that's an amazing thing to learn at 15, to be able to fully understand that, because that means you're coachable. That means you're all these different things as you move through. It's like, tell me it once and I'll go after it and I'll get it.
The maturity of for me, looking back as a hockey player, was light years ahead of maturity as a person. So, I mean, it's like, and then to not understand that, because you're young and you go through different things, but when you tell me that this is a secret about how I'm going to get to what I need, then you're so focused, like you said, of doing that and sacrificing the things you need to sacrifice, because I had, how many people I told me, like, if I had a dollar, I'd be so rich right now if I had $1 for every time somebody said I wouldn't be able to do what I wanted, accomplish it, because I wasn't the most talented kid. But nobody worked harder than I did, or nobody did. See, it's all about priorities, right? And are you willing to fulfill? What are you willing to do, right? And most people, they say they're willing to do it, and then yet they want it the easy way. No, embrace the suck, and most things that you want to get, you have to go through some sort of loss or some sort of pain or some sort of whatever to realize that that's what it is. Sitting here at 49 and then thinking back of being 15 and stuff like that, all the things that I wish you could tell the kid, but it's all part of being. I just wish God might have said, okay, I'll get you through this. You'll be here now to talk about the origins, but it's all about, it's work ethic. The bottom line, I got to, this is origins. Darren McCarty's got to know the why, right? And at the end of anybody's why that I respect or want, communication or whatever, it's what do you put in to get out? It's all about hard work. So find something you love and figure out how you can do that. And hence why we're sitting here having this conversation, but everything, Easy's behind the booth, but all the things we're trying to accomplish here at Woodward Sports, collectively and individually, and that, to me, that's the team mindset, right? Like, I'm a team guy. I've won individual awards and they're great, but man, nothing compares to winning championships.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really did put it on the line because you're 15 and you moved away from your family and you went to this brand new place. So I'm curious what the reality of that was like, because I can't imagine at 15 dedicating myself to something so much that I would move from my family. So I'm just trying to imagine like the person you were when you went there and how you ended up being there.
Yeah, well, you got to understand too, I was wanting to do anything to get out. Right? Yeah. The relationship with my stepdad was and for me to accomplish, I had to leave, because of the politics in the hockey world. in the hockey circle. I don't care where you are. It's just the truth. If I didn't get out of the area, I probably would have never made it. I would have got buried or fell into my addiction earlier or whatever else. That's what hockey always gave me, is that buffer to my addictions and everything else, because I would always be willing to do whatever it took. So it was just more of developing that mindset, and then I'm never going to be denied. Now, it's if I look back, it's like, holy cow, like how self-destructive are you? You know, and that's the thing that where I got lucky is, and I always say where, you know, always looking up to a guy like Bob Probert as the person and whatever, and him going through all this stuff and eventually being his teammate and stuff, is what I say is that Proby showed me that he'd go through it and he never knew where the line was, right? You know, but he would reveal it to me so I could always stop and sort of teeter on it. And so now it's my job to orate that, because he's not here anymore, but it's all the lessons, and we all have people that aren't here, but it's just sort of, who do you want to be? And then the origins of that, because the one thing too is that you said about you need a break from your prime. Well, the other thing is that you always find is that I never ever live with what ifs. What if I woulda? What if I woulda? Like, you know how many times I hear that, like, from people growing up? Well, if I would have done this, I could. Yeah, well then why didn't you?
Right.
Because I'm the guy that did it.
Right.
And half the shit that I did because my buddies couldn't do it. So I had to get the story, because I can't, you know, you never know when it's, you know, you don't think it's going to end. You never know it's going to end. And, you know, the one thing about, it's a fine line, because it's tough to live with like the coach and to be sort of like 15 and sort of learning life, and, you know, having a fake ID and hanging out at the bar, and, you know, losing your virginity to a 21-year-old and you know, getting all that great stuff going on, and then going home and having to live at the folks' house. So there was a little bit of tension there, but I was not going to be denied, because I went to hockey. I did everything I needed to do. Like, at the end of the day, and here's the thing, if it's not meant to be, then I could say, oh, I tried my best. All right, on to something else, right? You know, like, but it's just because of the way that things worked out, and I had the right people believing in me and at the right time, and you know, just in the situations that I was, and to be able to, you know, be drafted by the team that I always tell everybody, I said, yeah, I've been to Olympia when I was 5, and I've been to Tiger Stadium games and at Joe Louis Arena, and I was at, you know, Joe Louis Arena back when Mr. Ilitch was giving away cars. I was 12 years old, wondering why can't I win a car. I was like, Mr. Ilitch, you're gonna buy me gosh darn cars, and sure as heck, he bought me a whole bunch.
So, yeah, exactly.
So I'll get you in the back. I'll get you in the back end.
As a 15-year-old, you dove in, and that tells me a lot about you even in the future, because you would just dive into things. And you got so into it that there's a fantastic story in your book about the first time your mom came to visit and see you at a game. You kind of mentioned a little bit earlier that your mom was someone who also played and knows the game really well. But there was a scenario of your mom coming to see you play for the first time after a long time of being away. Can you tell that story a little bit?
Well, I think this is the great way to, you know, to explain as you're 15 years old in a training camp. And you know what, I was more of a playmaker, goal scorer, but I realized, you know, you got to stick up for yourself, and you're going in against teenagers and stuff like this. And I still had the same mentality. So my mom's there at the training camp game, and somebody picked a fight with me, and I broke his nose and waxed his stat, like hammered him. Like, it was like, wow. My dad was just like, my boy. My mom was so mad she wouldn't talk to me. She was like, and this is coming, and I couldn't understand it, because she came from my uncles and whatever like this, but this is her baby boy. So it was having this conversation like, Ma, you're not gonna be able to come. I ain't changing. You know, my dad's sitting back there going, you know, he had nothing to do with it. Yeah. But it was that thing. So I tell everybody, well, did your mom ever come around? And I said, I lost one fight in my junior career. So that was junior B. I probably got beat up a couple times. In fact, I broke the story in the book is the last game, and I fought this dude. I think he had kids in the stand, dude. I was 16 and he was like 22, dude. He had a beard and everything. Well, it was a bench brawl, and you know, man, I'm crazy. I go after, he's a monster, and he can't hit me, and he's so frustrated, but he's so strong, and I'm not strong enough yet. He breaks my wrist by twisting, sort of like MMA.
Damn.
Coach comes off the bench, drummer comes off the bench, his cowboy which goes after this guy or whatever like this. So I remember and it was this sort of like no big deal. It was rubbins racing. It's like whatever that. So in junior, my first year, Tony Yob was this big lefty in Kingston, and he fed me pretty good. That's the only time I've ever been fed that his overage year, and it was in Belleville, and I squared off with him rematch, and I beat him so bad. My mom was standing on the glass cheering like this, eh? So she came around, whatever. It's not her favorite, but she understands that that's who I was. And I told her, I got it from you anyways. Why are you mad at me?
You eventually get drafted into the OHL, but before that, I'm curious, when do you recall you finally felt yourself, like inside, that you were an NHL-worthy player, that you could play that high of a level? Do you remember if there was a moment, if there was a game? Was there something that made you think, I can do this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I got, one of the individual honors or whatever like this is I got named to the Canadian Hockey League All-Star team, which got to go to Saskatoon and play with all the big guys. And you got to remember, I was the late bloomer, so I was the year. But my last year junior was so much fun. I think, when did I really realize? I think I came back from Christmas. I think I had 23 goals at Christmas, and then I scored 32 after. But back-to-back hat tricks coming back, and just having so much fun. And I end up winning Player of the Year, right? Yeah. So I end up winning OHL Player of the Year. But that's where I realized it was like, okay, cool, that's great. But team, I want to win team. And I never had team success. I had it in baseball younger, but never really in hockey, right? But so it was all about the team. And I remember in Montreal getting drafted, I was hoping that Detroit would pick me with their first round pick, but they picked another guy, and I was afraid I was going to go to Ottawa on the first pick, but they picked another dude. And then when I heard, people say, what's it like to get drafted? And it says, when you realize it's 46 overall from Belleville, right winger, and I'm the only one it could be, right? You get these chills from your toes to your head, and to be able to have it at the old Montreal Forum and all my family there, and cousins, friends, and being 19 too. Sure. So we went out and got shit-faced.
Good old Canadian drinking age.
Absolutely.
In terms of, that time in the OHL and kind of leading up to you eventually going to get drafted, what was some of those things that you took away from those 3 years, kind of minor leagues, I don't know if you want to call it that, compared to the
development
NHL?
Stuff.
Yeah. How do you learn to be a pro in that scenario?
Well, it's just it's more to what I realized and stuff like this, because it was always inclusiveness is always important to me. So it was more so about the relationships and that I built in the community and in the school, and be able to turn the school from just strictly, the jocks and the kids at school, the hockey players and stuff. No, ours was great, and I still got two buddies, Tom Killenbeck and Darren Dink Reynolds, that we still talk to today. I mean, they follow the shows and stuff, but these are my boys that I played rugby with. These are boys that we'd watch hockey fights. We still used to study watching hockey fights, because we'd name different guys. That's how I would remember, like Shane Sparta Churley. He was a tough guy for Dallas, and I ended up fighting him or whatever, but I was always like, hey, we nicknamed you Sparta? Like, they say, looking at me like crazy. Yeah. But it was just learning how to live life. And the best thing about junior hockey is they have a schedule, 66 games, so it's more like the NHL. It's different than college. So if you're more of an NHL type caliber to get ready, that's one of the that's back in the day the option to go play juniors, because the game's more similar now, but yeah. It's a younger game.
So by the time you get used to kind of that setting, you're then propelled into the next level, which, as you mentioned, was the Red Wings taking you in the second round, 46th overall. You did spend a year in the Adirondacks.
Oh, it's awesome.
So I'm curious about that experience.
I knew it, but that's the thing. I knew going in, getting drafted, I played. It was so much fun. I said those 2 years were so much fun, because we had the toughest team in pro hockey. Like, we had like 10 killers if you go through the roster, and I was a young dog so I was like, I'd be out there just. I had 40. Yeah, exactly. I'd go after everybody, and I'd have Kirk Tomlinson, Denny Vial, and Bob Bugner behind me going, "Don't hurt the kid. You're next. Like this, and 45 majors. And I always knew that Bob Probert was the heavyweight. I never wanted to be. I wanted to be a Robin to Proby's Batman. I wanted to be the third. And then when, with Joey, I grew up with the Bruise Brothers, so I wanted to be, they needed the third wheel to take off all the little knickknacks, guys my size, guys. So that was the whole thing. And that, me being your heavy is not good, but when I'm your second, that's dangerous because you never know what to expect. Yeah. And that's, a lot of things you learn too, the respect. And I loved it. I just wanted to be a part of it, right? Yeah. You give me an opportunity and I'd do whatever it takes.
Yeah. Kirk Tomlinson was the guy you mentioned. And there's a lot of, and I love the stories of you kind of being like, I'm going to fight him first. And then he's kind of like, no, little brother, go away.
Yeah. No, he wanted to fight Darren Banks in Providence, and Banks was a tough guy for them, and I wanted to fight him to establish, and we had an argument before, and I jumped in, and dude, he never been so mad at me in my life, in his life, you know what I mean? Like then I got like being the rookie, as he like got that rookie haze and shit, had to do, and he would never let it go. Don't ever do that again. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I think I'm doing him a favor or whatever else. And he's sitting there the whole time, not going to the bench, but sitting there yelling at me in this fight. And Banksy and I are buddies. Darren Banks and I are buddies. And that's easy to say. You're buddies with a lot of guys you fight. So, and 99.9% of the time, after, we'll go out, have a beer and say, hey, you got me good, or whatever, but there's respect.
Yeah, I mean, and clearly you had an awesome time with the Adirondacks, but was there a plan going in as like, okay, I'm going to spend this amount of time here in the Adirondacks, and then they're going to call me? What's that?
Well, I knew I'd be down there the full year, and then when I knew that, when they changed and Scotty Bowman came in and they fired Brian Murray, I knew that was my opportunity to come in, and I was going to do whatever it took. And if you want to watch a game, there's an exhibition game in Chicago Stadium that I swear made me the team because I fought Cam Russell in the 5-on-5. Then we squared off at center ice, and Scotty Bowman was like, I think I need this guy on my team. So that was it. I'm willing to do whatever. I mean, and the goal was so there, and I made it, and I'm sure I made it myself indispensable, right? Where it was like a Badoo. Where I made it where you can't send me down. You need me too much, and you know what? Sure as heck, it paid off for him.
Yeah, you stuck around.
It worked out.
Wings should be and are favored to win the realigned Central Division. The team will have some youth, and particularly an injection of it from tough guy Darren McCarty.
Here they go. Whoa, bingo! McCarty floors Grant Jennings to the left.
So I want to go to your rookie year, but before we kind of really hop into the nitty-gritty of it, I want to kind of take a step back and look at the big picture of it all, because this whole story, it started as a game your older cousin introduced you to, and eventually, you start to develop the high IQ for the game. As a teenager, you move away from your parents, on down the list. Anytime I get to talk to someone like yourself who has done this particular thing, is achieving a childhood dream. I'm always very curious about that experience. So for you, what was that? I've made it. I've achieved my childhood dream.
Well, this is where I tell everybody, listen, the destination is an oasis. What do I mean by that? I mean, you're a human being. You're going to want, and then you're always going to want more. All I ever wanted to do is get drafted, into the NHL. Then I did. And all I wanted to do is play for the Red Wings. That worked out. And all I ever wanted to do is win a cup. And then all I want to do is win another one. And you're never satisfied, so it's about the journey and enjoying the journey a little bit more. And if I can give anybody any advice, speed limit. 55, enjoy the scenery. You'll get there, but it's about those journeys and who do you go on those journeys with, right? So I think the I made it moment for me was when I shoved it up my cousin's ass because we bet when we were 10 years old, because he's the biggest friggin' Maple Leafs fan, and the Detroit Red Wings sucked. And we bet $100 at 10 years old. That's a lot of money. That's like $1 million these days.
So it's like $1.5 million in 2021 dollars.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And the bet was who was going to win the Stanley Cup first, the Wings or Toronto. So when I brought the cup back to the home for the party at my grandparents and made him pay me $200 because I scored the cup clincher.
Yeah.
The bet, we rebet Maple Leafs Lions because I told them that I was going to win at least 2 more, and I was wrong. I won 3. Sorry, Chad, I lied. I always told you I only lied to girls. I was wrong. But anyways, is the fact that I can't lose. So even if the Leafs do win, I'll still be up $100. But
Yeah,
that's
you
my
can't lose
that whenever my make it moments, Ben, and don't get it, is when I shove it up your ass. Is when I sit there and don't have to say anything, and and to everybody when I walk around, and I don't go back to town, but when I see people that I know that didn't think I'd make, you know what I'm saying? Sit here and you don't have to say anything. That's my I made it. It's the fact of sitting here today, right? People didn't think I'd be alive. I shouldn't be alive, right? But I did, because I'm living proof and motivation that it doesn't matter how far down, as long as you never quit, no matter how bad. And I can say this is as bad could ever get to wanting to end it and to be able to pick myself back up. It's about the journey, and it's about the people that surround you. So I just needed someone to tell me that I was worth believing in myself, right? That's what I was like. A love of a woman gave me the belief that I was good enough, right? Because once I got back up, it wasn't the fact. It's like I tell everybody, don't fear when I get up, right? It's the fact that I go like the big dog on the porch. I've already thought about everything. So the fact if I make the move to get up, that's when you're screwed, not when I get up. Because there's no bluff in my stuff, right? It's I'll tell you once and show you twice, and it's accountability. And I want to surround myself because I'm here, and you look at the Red Wing organization with what's going on now. What's the accountability? Steve Eisman from the top, Pat Verbeek, Chris Draper. I name it on down. There's 11 guys that I played with that were. So it's just a matter of time when it comes to that. It's like what we're doing here. It's growing, and it's sort of the accountability. The origin beauty of everything to me is that we're growing this network and doing all this stuff as all these teams are coming out, and we're all going to grow together, and we're doing it. And I just want everybody to realize that let's just slow it down and make sure the foundation is laid, because it's all about, it's going to be so much fun, because I know, and and us older people know what's coming. Right? And it could be the greatest thing ever. And it's because of understanding now it's about the journey. And for me, it's crazy, Ben. Here's the biggest origin, right? Of Darren McCarty before, and Darren McCarty growing, and you can even go way back to Darren McCarty that left home at 15. To Darren McCarty now, is that I live. What anybody thinks about me is none of my business. When I used to live, what everybody thinks about me is all my business, usually motivated to shove people in their ass, but also, too, the fear of missing out, the fear of, everything like that, where now, I understand, and it's just the message to the people that have struggled or struggle, and life comes at you, but it's just who do you surround yourself with, and who do you go to listen to. And I just, for me, no matter what I'm talking about, is that there's no bullshit. Yeah. And that's it. So that's the origin. That's the origin of growth, the origin of everything else, of how see this stuff, of the origin of receiving the message, or being able to see them, the 29th would be my parents' 44th anniversary, which is, to me, that's cool, right? Because that's him, and that's the stuff, the positive I want to surround myself with. It's a constant. For me, it's a roller coaster. It used to be a roller coaster. Now it's a log ride.
Yeah.
I
love that.
Right. Which means that, why do you go on the log ride? Because you want to get wet. Yeah. Right. And you like that little dip-de-doo. That's enough excitement for me. I get a little splash. Somebody screams. I'm good. I don't need the friggin' blue streak or whatever else.
Yeah. Controlled, understood chaos. Right.
Controlled chaos.
Yeah,
That's it. And here's the reason why I can, because I know the answer. I've been there. There's nothing that I haven't done. Man, that's the whole thing. So like the origins of you, it's just tempering who you are, and understanding and accepting who you are, and being okay with who you are. Sure. And it's okay not to be okay.
In terms of kind of the big moments of your career, I think what a lot of people probably talk to you about is the Lemieux fight in 97, which, kind of put an interesting end to the curse that the Red Wings,
Red Wing D-Day.
The drought. Yeah, exactly.
March 26, 1997.
Yeah, but one thing that I think is super fascinating about that whole journey in 97 was discovering the story behind the move that you put on against the Flyers to score that cup-clinching goal. Is it true you learned that move the summer before that season?
Well, parts of the 2 summers before. So I always say, what do you put in to get out? And after we lost to Jersey in 95, I went to Hammarby and Stockholm in Sweden and worked with Thomas Storm. Yeah, right. It was the next year we got beat by Colorado that I went back over and I went up to Lexon North, but I worked with Tommy and Hammarby before. And I always tell everybody, oh, that's nice of you to go over and do hockey schools. And I go, fuck off. I was in the hockey schools with 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds because it's about what you're willing to do to get better. And the drill, the move that I made is that before every practice, so I was there 2 months, skated 6 days a week, for 5 minutes, you go around and you pull it in and pull it out. And, the puck, because the biggest difference between North America and across the pond is over here, you're taught, don't touch the puck, get in line, wait your turn, hit the net, stop at the net, right? Over there, you're taught if you're in line, you got to pay attention and control the puck because the game always coming like this. And it was that move that it was like, I can remember it clear as day because it was the end of the shift. Philly was changed, and I came through the middle just like a responsible grind line right winger. Got a pass from Thomas Holmstrom. I went to dump it in. I know, because I'm like, okay, dump it and get off. Yeah. But out of nowhere, the big guy decided I'd be the mayor of Lemieux, and then just muscle memory. So because I'd done it 1,000 times, it just seemed muscle memory. And honestly, I didn't realize to watching that goal so many times as I played in the hook opener is that I slid it through his stick. I thought I pulled it around his. No, still don't remember, but I do remember at the time is just, oh my God, I got him beat, and then the orange out of the thing. And I remember I tell everybody, you know why I scored? Because I was this far away, and I said, please don't miss the net. Double pirouette, see Steve Yzerman, guy you grew up watching, speaking of origins, guy I've been watching since I was 10 years old, and him looking at me going, what the fuck was that? And I don't know. And he goes, good thing you don't have to do it again in this great Stevie way, because if you didn't know, I'm Stevie's bitch, still am. So
yeah. Would he call you that?
Would he call me my bitch?
Would he call you?
Absolutely, 100%. 100 million %. Yeah.
But it's so interesting.
Always comes back to me. Yeah. Even to this day. I might even get a text that I did something wrong.
Yeah. Stories like that I come across are so fun for me to talk about because you scored probably the most important goal.
I beat one guy one-on-one my whole career for the cup clinching goal. You don't have to do it. It's
Which
all
was
timing.
a warm-up drill for you.
Right.
Amazing. That's incredible.
That's hockey.
It's interesting you talk about teammates and all this stuff because one thing that is consensus about you, no matter who I talk to or ask about you, is that you are dedicated to the team and your teammates. That's unquestioned. Undisputed fact. You had a guy early in your career, we kind of talked about a little bit, Kirk Tomlinson, who kind of showed you the ropes and seemed to be a bit of a mentor on the ice. I love the story that I mentioned earlier, the guy, you two fighting over who gets to fight next. So I'm curious, when you became kind of at the age of Kirk Tomlinson or like kind of that position as the vet, did you have a Darren McCarty that you kind of took under your wing and kind of helped along as you moved along?
I mean, different guys. All of our little brother was always Matthew Dandino. And here's what I mean is that like Dandy was because he was drafted in the second round a couple of years after I was or whatever, but it was one of these things that he loved him, but he was good enough because he was versatile, but he would always be the one that was the little brother, like sort of responsible of making sure everything was picked up. Or if you like all the video you see of personal video in the Russian 5 documentary and stuff, like Andy's the guy that's going to have it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, but it's just as far as there wasn't really another me coming up because the one thing that was all the time, and this is what really happened, is Dino Cicerelli had Marty Lapointe and I when we were younger, and then when he left, Shanny came in and he really taught us how we could be the best, sort of be half of him. each, where I would take all, and you wouldn't want Marty fighting unless because he's playing some big minutes and because he had he's a great player.
Yeah.
So we looked at it more of embracing it, and I'm meek as hell, man. Meek means you tell me why we're doing it and I'm all in, man. It's not about anything else. It's like the mentality of something going on and you're involved and asking questions later because your guys are involved. I don't give a shit why. If I see my guys there, well, we're gonna figure it out later, right? That's sort of the mentality. Then that's the mentality I grew up with.
Yeah.
I grew up with, my crew growing up was like 6 Italians, so I ate well.
Yeah, but one thing that I also appreciate about you, even before I met you, was just your open and honesty, and you don't really put up a veil when it comes to your struggles, whether that's addiction or whether that's anything else. So I'm curious, for you, was it a conscious decision to be open about your struggles and put that into the book or in your interviews, whatever you may do?
Absolutely. It was therapy. The biggest, and I didn't realize, but I had to write the book because, like I said, okay, you hear so many things. Now hear my truth. I sign it, enjoy my truth. And you know what? Like, if somebody else saw it better or read it better, write your own book. Put it out, whatever. But to me, it's about being the open book. And at the time, the one thing that I really learned when my wife Cheryl had given me the ability to believe in myself, was also honesty. Honesty is the number one thing. I've always had the loyalty, but honesty, so it's, and the fact that I lived honest was something that was a blessing. So when I wanted to lay everything out there, and it's because I'm not embarrassed of where I came, or would I change things? Sure. Would I want whatever? But I firmly believe of like, it's like, if you ask me 100%, I know why I have that goal in the 4 cups. It's for now, what I'm doing in the cannabis, to help people, to save people, to educate people, because that plan in particular saved my life and in my journey and stuff. And the one thing that I learned is, like, this is the whole thing. Yeah, I went to 4 rehabs. I got $1 million of therapy in this brain, which means that I'm pretty friggin', I got ways to work it out or to talk it out and stuff like that. But the fact is that when you know where you want to get to and you're not hiding, it goes back to the mirror, it goes to everything else, is that, with the intelligence. And for me, heart virtue, I don't know if you've ever read, there's a book out there, and I forget the doctor's name, it's called Heart Virtue, but what makes you tick? Now mine is vulnerable truth with integrity, right? That's, you ever notice you're in a room and something throws you off or whatever? Well, that's your heart virtue, right? What makes you tick, your soul, whatever. So when I realize that, I can apply that to different things. And of course, the March 26th, the Lemieux thing, how it played out better than anything else, because God played it out and got 4 minutes, scored the overtime. I mean, you can't write a better script than that.
Truly, no,
but that's the whole way that I sort of think about things or look at things, that there's a bigger plan. It's like the things when we talk about what we're building or whatever, and we're talking about, doing different things, you see it as the artist, and you see it, like I see it certain way, but I can only see it, maybe color TV, tube TV that you have to tie. Then it takes a guy, and it's not athlete or non-athlete, but it's an artist, and it takes somebody with a vision to understand what the person be in front of the camera for behind. That's why I always say to my daughter, who graduated from Ferris State in sports broadcasting, I always say, is that your mother, she doesn't understand. She's a behind the camera person. We're in front of the camera people. But it's telling a story, and it's putting that story together. And that's the whole thing, like you said, is I realize, and again, I'm not in a hurry to get to where I need to. And the greatest thing that the cannabis is, if you live your life like the plant, it's resilient and patient. See, I always believe that if you're with pure intentions, then it doesn't matter. You're going to have, misunderstandings or whatever, but you're going to talk them out. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's all about who you're doing it with.
Oh, for sure. And I know you mentioned medical marijuana a little bit, and how that did help you stop drinking and all those things. Is that why you kind of found your way into that business? And
well, it didn't just help me, it saved my life. I mean, I was probably 2 weeks from having my organs explode. I was 75 pounds heavier. My organs were shutting down. I mean, like when you say you don't get sick when you drink, you get sick when you don't drink. And it was real bad. So the love of, thank goodness that I had a caregiver, and through the cannabis community and a few people, that the Rick Simpson oil RSO, which is the plant concentrate, which is what they use to fight cancer, right? So like if somebody out there is with cancer and stuff, look into Rick Simpson oil. It's about the conversation. And the whole thing is I want people to know that they have the option. But then you look into the CBNs and the CBGs, and there's actually the stuff that doesn't get you high, that helps your body, it helps your sleep, and it's just about the education. Now, I specifically where the Darren McCarty brand licensed with Pincannon, the largest seed to sale up in Pinconning with the big P, but I get to create things that work for me and to talk about it and educate. And it's not about, there's no competition, right? There's no competition. I compete with myself. Yeah. And it's just about bringing the best quality and bringing the conversation to know that you have the option. In fact, selfishly, Ben, I hope you don't, more for me, but I'm more compassionate than that.
We'll get you out of here with this one. How'd you get involved with Woodward Sports? How'd you end up here on the hook 3 to 5 every weekday? How did that story come about?
It was a hostage situation.
Stick.
Yes. Joey.
Held you up.
Joey threatened me to get naked in front of him. He threatened to pull.
You too?
He threatened to take his shirt off, and I
didn't
said,
know if that was just me.
Please, no. I think one of the things is, and I've told Tom Mazaway this for the past 15 years, is that because I'm proof that the media and athletes can be friends, even, be friends with all different media ones if you're a good media one, but I'll call you out if you're a bad media one. And, exactly. They know who they are. They know who they are. We don't need to salty your stream here, but the fact is I always want to do a show with Maz because I love Maz's stay in sports, and I love Maz's preparation and being the radio guy and just being Maz and like I'm very protective of my Mavs, right? Where like I get to yell at them in certain things because it's our relationship. And I'll tell you one thing is because and my wife, who Tom Mazaway, through all the thick and thin that I've been through, has always been that friend to give a call, not to be, not tell me what I didn't need to hear, but just say, hey, how you doing, bud? During different times, in the toughest times of my life, but just reaching out as the person he is. So I have a lot of loyalty to that. But Sean Belegian and I do a WJR show, and being great friends, and his relationship here, and to come over and honestly to sit down with Chad Johnson, and he's the Jerry Jones of the project, and where what I love is that all the stuff we're doing now, like all this stuff is not what we're about. It's about being out in public and bringing it all back to this, but it's about the people. And it's about I will fight. This is my team now too, and we have good days and we have not so good days. But the bottom line is everybody here is here for each other, and it's not about and it doesn't matter how you got here, and if you come from the team or if you've grinded out like Easy from his basement and stuff like that. It's to realize where to put your energy and what it is and how important you are doing what you do for everybody, and then that's what I love. I mean, It's not about the glory. It's not about anything else. To me, it's about the compassion, about togetherness, and like I say, I'll leave you with this: as I thank everybody out there, because I'm a battery, and you people are my power, and that's why I keeps going strong. So I say thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ben.
Hey, man, it sounds like you've once again found yourself with hell of teammates. And for you, from the mean streets of Leamington to Petersburg, Belleville, and eventually here in Detroit, 4 Stanley Cups later, holding it down on the hook every weekday from 3 to 5 p.m. Again, thank you for telling your story here.
Episode 25.
Yeah.
See that?
That's
episode 25.
We'll get a screenshot of that and make sure that shows up in the thing. Again, D-Mac, I really do appreciate you taking the time and going through your story a bit in a different way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all you do, Ben. Anytime, bud. Thanks.
All right. Well, make sure, once again, you tune in every weekday 3 to 5 on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever you can find the show, especially at woodwardsports.com or the Woodward Sports app as well. Find him on social media, Facebook, Instagram, at Real Darren McCarty, on Twitter, Darren McCarty4. Once again, thank you, D-Mac. I really do appreciate it. Well, folks, next week we start anew. Until then, bye, everybody.